With 2 years till the 2016 presidential election, there's a lot of talk the strongest GOP nominee would be a governor from the Midwest. One possibility from the key electoral state of Ohio is making his state's economic turnaround the basis for his re-election bid in November. Joining us now from Columbus, Ohio, Governor John Kasich. And Governor, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be with you.
You have engineered quite a turnaround in Ohio since you took office in 2011, and let's put up part of your record. Your state has been the #5 job creator in the nation over that period of time, and #1 in the Midwest. Unemployment is now 6.5%, the lowest in your state since June of 2008, and Ohio has gone from an $8 billion deficit to a $1.5 billion surplus. Question, what's the secret to your success?
Chris, something that conservative Republicans have promoted, you know, I was a supporter of Ronald Reagan when I was first elected to Congress in '82, when we were in the midst of a deep recession, and that is balancing budgets, being fiscally responsible, common sense regulations, and tax cuts. I like to say, if you have a restaurant, you don't have any customers, you don't raise your prices, and that's where Ohio was. And so what we've done is we balanced our budget, created this surplus, provided certainty, cut taxes for small business, killed the death tax, and we have common sense regulations, and we are engaged in workforce training. All these things coupled with certainty here in Ohio is what's allowed job creators to feel comfortable and allow them to invest in our state. Almost 250,000 people more now working than when we all came in 3 years ago, and we're deeply grateful, but we've got a long way to go.
All right, but the national economy is also in the midst of a recovery. Have President Obama's policies been part of the solution?
Well, look, I think the economy is healing a little bit, Chris, but this is not the kind of recovery that we expect after a recession. We should be growing a lot faster. And I think the problem is you have these giant deficits. You got the threat of taxes. You got the problem of Obamacare, which creates uncertainty. And all of those things are a drag on what is the natural healing process. So think about healing when you're 30 years old as opposed to you're 90 years old, right? I mean, we should be growing as a 30-year-old and healing as a young person rather than an older person. And the fact of the matter is that this recovery is anemic. And I wish the president could provide the certainty, because that would mean that more Americans would be able to realize their God-given dreams and destinies in life.
But Governor, you have just proposed a new budget that seems to track with at least some Obama policies. You propose spending $2.4 billion on construction and maintenance projects, half a billion dollars rather, more than 2 years ago. And while you would cut the state income tax by 8.5%, you would pay for it by raising taxes on oil and gas drilling, on business, and on tobacco. The conservative group, Americans for Tax Reform, criticizes you for those tax increases.
Well, Chris, I think, well, first of all, we have really restrained ourselves in terms of rebuilding the infrastructure of Ohio. But the time comes when every state needs to rebuild their infrastructure, and we've done it conservatively. Look, our bond ratings from our credit ratings from New York have improved. So they look at Ohio as very strong. So as we're building the economy with the private sector, there are some places where we need to rebuild the infrastructure of our state. In terms of tax reform, we know, even Ronald Reagan knew, that there are some taxes that penalize economic growth. What we want to do is reduce that income tax, at the same time giving people at the bottom an opportunity to have some tax reform and tax relief as well. And so, Chris, we know that, you know, cigarette taxes, frankly, they're regressive. Cutting the income tax is pro-growth. You've got to have a tax system. The question is, what is the tax system that allows you to collect revenue, but at the same time provides the greatest chance at economic growth? And look, the proof's in the pudding. We've been doing this for 3 years since we all came into office, and it's working. We're up, you know, the jobs, you saw it, you posted the numbers. The philosophy that we have seems to be paying off.
For all your successes, you've also, understandably, hit some bumps in the road. In 2011, you signed a law stripping public employees of their collective bargaining rights. The voters of the state overruled you in a referendum later that year. If you're reelected, would you take that fight on again?
No, I would not take it on. You know, Chris, the fact is the voters spoke. And when we lost that referendum in 2011, you listen to the people when they're clear. And so, as I said the night that we lost that election, you know, we heard the voters and we'll move on. And that's kind of where I am. And Chris, my direction and my priorities today are to train workers, real improvements to K through 12 education, continue fiscal responsibility, continue to have a tax system that encourages economic growth, and continue to make sure that our regulations make total, complete sense in our state.
All right, let's talk about another bump. And maybe you don't think it's a bump, on Obamacare, you declined setting up a state exchange, leaving that to the feds. On the other hand, you have agreed to accept the money to expand Medicaid over the objections of the majority, Republican majority in your state legislature. How do you explain those different actions?
Well, Chris, first of all, I don't think it was over the objection of the majority of Republicans. Had there been a vote, I think it would have passed. But I have a chance to bring back $14 billion in Ohio dollars back to Ohio to do what? To strengthen our local communities as they treat the most significant problem of drug addiction and the problem of mental illness. Now, I guess I could leave that money in Washington and leave it to those congressmen and senators to spend it wisely. Unfortunately, I was there for 18 years, and I know what they do with that money. I get it back to Ohio to solve some of our most vexing problems. See, my philosophy is this, Chris. As the state does better and gets stronger economically, we must help people who live in the shadows. The people who have drug addictions, we have to get them rehab. The people who have mental illness. Those two groups of people should not be sitting in our jails and our prisons. That's unconscionable in our state. And so it's a two-pronged strategy. Continue to grow the state, continue to make it stronger and stronger economically, and help to lift people out of the ditch where they are, bring them into the mainstream, and give them an opportunity to realize their God-given purpose. I think it's entirely consistent with conservative and Republican philosophy, and I'm really pleased we're doing it because there are many people in Ohio now whose lives, frankly, will be in a position of being able to move forward.
You are up for election in November, and according to the latest poll out there, you lead Cuyahoga County Executive Ed Fitzgerald, a Democrat, by 5 points. He says that, like Republicans in Washington, your policies favor the wealthy at the expense of the have-nots. He points to the fact that with all of these income tax cuts, the top tax bracket for the wealthiest in Ohio will be 5%. How do you respond to that general argument that you're favoring the wealthy at the expense of the have-nots?
Well, I don't respond to those political arguments, but what I will tell you is in our latest tax cut, we have increased the earned income tax credit, so people at the bottom are going to get more. And in fact, we've increased the standard deduction. And this is interesting, Chris. Between 0 and 40,000, we're increasing the standard deduction by $1,000. And between 40 and 80,000, we're going to increase it $500. At the same time, excuse me, we're bringing the top rate down. This, again, it kind of looks like a Reagan philosophy. Give tax relief from the bottom up and get that top rate down so we don't continue to drive the most successful out of our state. And as we cut the income tax rate, it helps small business because most small business people file their taxes as individuals. And as those taxes come down, it gives them more space to invest in their equipment. It gives them more space to hire people. And we believe that small business is one of the greatest engines of economic growth in our state. So lowering taxes will help us. $12 billion has walked out of Ohio to lower or no income tax states since 1995, and we aim to make Ohio the best state in the country.
Governor, if you are re-elected, you would be an obvious candidate for the Republican nomination for president in 2016. You went on the record this week as saying you are not interested in that. On the other hand, your opponent, Ed Fitzgerald, has put up a website with a pledge that you will serve everyone who gets elected, whoever gets elected, will serve a full 4-year term. Why not sign that if you have no interest in running for president?
Hey, Chris, look, let me just be clear. We brought Ohio back from the brink of disaster. I mean, we were down 350,000 jobs. Now we're up almost 250,000. We were $8 billion in the hole. Now we're up $1.5 billion. We have so much to do with workforce. We've just put into play a third-grade reading guarantee, so kids are not socially promoted to the point where they drop out. We've got a major program to deal with dropouts.
Respectfully, sir, can you answer my question?
Yeah, the answer is real simple. My only focus is now being reelected and continuing to lift Ohio, period. I don't fall for gimmicks and this and that. That's all silly politics. My direction and everything that I am committed to is our great Buckeye State, and at the same time, if I could, I'd suit up and try to help Dayton in that round of the Sweet 16.
Well, I'm about to get in that second, but I mean, when you say you're not interested in running, are you flatly ruling out running in 2016?
My only focus, Chris, I mean, I don't know how many times I have to say this. I am flattered about the fact that people talk about my running for president. You know, I tried to run for president in the 2000 election, and nobody would pay any attention. Now, all I'm focused on is Ohio, and everybody wants to talk about something else. So I'm here in Ohio.
All right, I want to talk about...
All the musings are great.
I want to talk about something else. March Madness, which you already started to get it plug. I mean, you have to point out the fact Dayton beat your alma mater.
I know. It's
Ohio
okay.
State in the first round. Now, they pulled off the big upset last night over Syracuse. Two questions. How are you feeling about Dayton, and how are your brackets?
Well, I haven't filled out a bracket, but they asked me down in Dayton what I thought about the Dayton-Syracuse game, and here's what I said. You know, Syracuse had a great run this year, but you also know that Syracuse lately had trouble being able to hit the three, being able to have really good shooting, and I thought with Dayton's depth and their ability to shoot that they had a pretty good chance against Syracuse. The next game, which I think they'll play Kansas, that'll be a little bit tougher. And in terms of Ohio State, we've had a lot of glory here, and we'll have it again, and it's kind of nice to see a place like Dayton get so excited. I guess the president of the university was crowd surfing down there, Chris. So yeah, I've never seen you crowd surf, but I think that's in your future.
Well, I was going to say, if this politics thing doesn't work out, Governor, you may have a sports commentating or analysis job in your future. And you know, the paper down there wrote the University of Dayton. So they're now the basketball power in the state. Governor, thank you so much for coming in today. Always a pleasure. We'll be following the race for governor in Ohio, sir.
Thank you.
When we come back, Obamacare marks a big milestone, but is it?